I'm Michael Smith.
I'm Chuck Osborne.
And welcome to the Iron Capital Podcast,
where we break down investment stuff with anecdotes and stories that non-financial geeks can understand.
Hey, this is Michael.
And this is Chuck.
It's Wednesday, June 26, 2024, and this is the 13th episode of the Iron Capital Podcast. Woohoo! So let's get started. Chuck, what's on your mind?
Lucky 13. Well, Dave Ramsey's on my mind, Michael. Okay. And his kind of obsession with debt. Mm-hmm. And whether or not he's right or not. So
I think that's timely. Well, yeah. Let's get in it. Let's talk about, let's just start off, where do you think Dave Ramsey's wrong about debt?
Well, what spurred this is someone sent me a video when they were talking about taking a loan for a new car. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they say is that you should never take a loan for a new car, and frankly, you should never buy a new car unless you're a millionaire. And the reason being is that a car immediately depreciates from value when you drive it off the lot. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say that. You hear that all the time. And what that is a symptom of is that they're not really thinking about the car the way that they should be thinking about the car, and they're not thinking about the loan the way they should be thinking about a loan. All right, you don't borrow a car, you borrow money. Mm-hmm. And the car going off the lot, you think about this, what a car actually is. It's a machine, right? Does anyone ever go out there and say, don't ever buy a new refrigerator? Because as soon as the guy installs it, it's gone down in value.
Yeah, no.
Does anyone ever say, don't ever buy a new washing machine or a new dishwasher? I mean, that's what a car is. A car is a machine. Yeah. It is not an investment.
It's a depreciating
asset. It is not supposed to hold value.
Yeah.
It is supposed to provide reliable, safe transportation. And the value you get out of a car has far less to do with whether you buy it new or used, and far more to do with how long you own it. Mm-hmm. And what they should be talking about is, are you actually getting the value out of your transportation dollar? Yep. And then whether or not you borrow money to pay for the car is a totally different conversation. I mean, that really has to do with your use of money, and more so than the fact that you're borrowing it, what you're borrowing it for.
Sure.
And what I don't want to mislead. I mean, for most of what Dave Ramsey stuff says, I think he's generally right. He's in the right direction, but he definitely goes extreme in terms of the idea that you should never have any debt except for a 15-year mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and he always makes these comments about that millionaires and the wealthy don't use debt, and that's just not true.
No, it's not true. They kind of talk about this big study that they did where they studied millionaires, and he's defining a millionaire as anyone who literally has a net worth of $1 million, sure, which today is not much. It's just not what it used to be.
Especially when you take the value of a home in.
Correct. So he's saying, well, if you don't owe anything on your home and you have a $300,000 401k, then you're a millionaire. If your home's worth $600,000-$700,000. And frankly, now you're in good shape if you're in that situation. That's a good place to be. Yep. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not really what people think about
when they say millionaire.
Yeah. And then people will push back on him on that, and then he'll, he's a colorful personality. This is why people love him.
Yep.
Anyone who disagrees with him is stupid.
Yeah.
And then he'll go, a millionaire's not a billionaire. Well, okay, that's absolutely true. But there's a lot of numbers between 1 million and a billion. And I think when most people think of millionaires, what they're really saying is someone who's actually wealthy.
They mean someone who's wealthy,
who's financially independent.
Yep.
And that's going to take more than just paying off your house and having a few $100,000 in a retirement plan.
Yeah.
And really, one way I would define it perhaps as someone who actually has $1 million or more in liquid
assets,
investable assets.
Yep.
And when you get into that scenario, I can guarantee you, because I have not spent my career as a radio host. I've spent my career actually working with wealthy individuals, and they use debt. They use it wisely and they use it prudently, but they use it.
It's a tool like any other tool.
Exactly. It is a tool like any other tool. And it's about what is the best use of your money.
Yeah.
And so, that really matters. Now, in today's environment, if you're talking about a car, an automobile, you got higher interest rates today. It's probably not, you probably can't justify an actual car loan. But I bought my car new in 2014. So I've driven it now for 10 years. I'm not even thinking about replacing it because it still drives fine. I did finance that car because in 2014 you had ridiculously low interest rates, and I got a great deal on the financing. Now what we did do, and that to me this would be much more helpful for people, is the first thing you need to do is you need to find a car that you can easily afford. And that is where I think, to some degree, I think this is what Ramsey is really
getting at. Yeah.
But the way he goes about it is not the way I would talk about it. I think it is very easy when it comes to cars and houses, especially, for people to always want a fancier car, always want the bigger house, want to be in a certain neighborhood. Want to have a certain brand label on their car, and that can get them into trouble from a budget standpoint. And so I think the overall big picture is right. You need to make sure that a car is a tool for reliable, safe transportation, and you need to be able to do that. I would say easily in your budget, and not just.
Don't stretch.
You're not stretching at all for a car. In my opinion, you really shouldn't stretch for a house. But you can somewhat justify stretching a little bit for a house more than you can for a car.
Yep.
And then when you actually purchase the car, this is one thing that a little advice in terms of negotiating. And I don't care if car dealers have said that there's no more haggling. There's still negotiations that go on when you buy a car.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is that before you do anything, you got to get them to agree on the price. Don't even discuss financing or anything else until they've agreed on the price. Then you can figure out how you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay. And remember that if you're taking a loan for your car, you're not borrowing the car. You are borrowing money. The car is simply collateral for that money. And the reason you might borrow money is because perhaps you have the money, but it's invested, and you're better off keeping that money invested than you are taking it out and paying it, using it to buy the car.
Yeah.
And that's going to depend on a lot of variables. It's going to depend primarily on what kind of interest you're paying on the loan, how easily you can afford the loan payment, how quickly you can pay it off, those kinds of things. And granted, with higher interest rates today, it's harder to justify a car loan than it was several years ago. But if we ever get back to a day where there's 0% financing, then you can't argue that it's always wrong to never take a loan.
No,
for a car.
again, a lot of people's homes mortgages are at 3% currently. My car, I financed it. I'm at 2%. So I'm not getting out of that, right? Like,
well, it would be kind of crazy.
It would be sort of crazy. That's
it would be
wonderful.
Kind of crazy.
That's very good,
right? Which also brings us then to the house, to the home, the Ramsey plan on the home is that they say, okay, well, that's the one place it's okay to have debt. But he says it needs to be a 15-year mortgage, and you need to try to pay it off early. And here's the thing where, frankly, and we've talked to clients about this so many times. Mathematically, it is almost impossible to justify paying off the mortgage. When you take what mortgage rates usually are, and yes, they're higher today than they used to be.
But almost no one has those.
But almost no one has those. But especially if you have a mortgage from several years ago, and you're talking about 3%, or perhaps maybe even less, or certainly less than 4%. Then it is very hard to actually justify paying that off, because what you're doing is you're taking money away from investments that could be paying you a lot more, and you're dumping that to pay off this asset.
And when you say justify, what you're really meaning is strictly from a financial standpoint, right? Because there's other justification here.
We are talking about the math.
Yeah.
And this is the way we've explained it to many clients, because many clients come to us and say, should I pay off my house? And I go, listen, we can do all the financial, I can do anything you want to on a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is never going to tell you to pay off your house. Now, that's mathematically, that's financially. Psychologically, there are a lot of people who do get weighed down by the fact that they have a mortgage.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those people, then by all means,
if that helps you sleep better
pay
at
it
night,
off.
then do it.
If you're going to sleep better at night, if it's going to lower your stress levels,
make you feel better about the world,
right? Then by all means,
do it.
Feel free to do that. But you just have to understand that that's more of a psychological phenomenon than an actual financial.
But if you're thinking about what do the wealthy do,
right?
What we see the wealthy doing are, I'm not going to pay off a 3% loan if I can make 9 or 10% on that money. They're not going to do that.
Absolutely. Every major bank in the country and every regional bank and everything, they have a class of employee that's called a private banker. And that private banker works with wealthy clients of the bank, helping them borrow money. And that job would not exist if millionaires never
because you need
money.
Lots of assets as collateral to get those loans at good rates.
and most of the time what happens is it is a use of money. They have the money if they chose to just pay for an asset, because again, we are talking about wealthy individuals, but they choose to leave that money invested and then take on debt. Now, caution, within reason.
Within reason, yeah.
And if you have a mortgage on the home, if at all possible, you need to have at least 20% down. Don't start taking second mortgages and lines of credit and all of those kinds of things. Because the one thing, and this is where I think Dave is right, is that debt adds risk.
Yes, it is. It is dangerous. It can be dangerous.
Can be dangerous
if used inappropriately.
And if you get to a point where you have too much debt, that is often what leads to financial ruin. And frankly, that's what happened to those that are familiar with the Dave Ramsey story. That's what happened to him, and that is why, in reaction to that, he is like, he'll never go into debt again. Because he was actually flipping homes and doing so with 100% leverage. He was
all debt.
Zero down, all debt, and
he got in trouble.
And he got in big trouble and went broke, and that it scarred him.
Yeah.
And so
we can't help but be impacted by what happened in our lives.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just like, people will tell you about, statistics all the time. If they say that, whatever it is, eating fatty foods is actually of low risk or what have you. If you have one loved one or someone who had a bad diet and then had a heart attack, you're never going to be convinced of any,
That's right.
Statistical.
Yeah, the statistics don't matter.
Statistics don't matter,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
because your actual life experience, and his life experience was that he went in debt and it cost him dramatically, and that's why he had such a
but the real point here is debt's a tool. It can be used if you use it appropriately. It can't be used to finance a lifestyle you can't afford.
Yeah, and that is exactly right.
Yeah.
And the one area where we completely agree with him is no credit card debt ever.
Yep.
Now, he will go as far as saying you don't ever even have a credit card. I use credit cards. I know plenty of people. We have plenty of clients who use credit cards. But we never don't pay them off.
Yeah.
At the end of the month.
Yeah, if you pay them off at the end of the month, there are things you can get out of it that are positives.
But never use a credit card to actually finance something, because that will get you into tons of trouble.
Yeah, 20 plus rates are hard to climb out of.
Yeah, but there certainly, the other thing that we want to be realistic here is a car is a necessity.
You have no choice.
Right, you have no choice. Right, you have to have an automobile, and to say that no one should ever take a loan. I mean, that is not, in my view, realistic.
It's not realistic.
It's not realistic
for most people.
No,
you have to have a car to survive in the world for a lot of people.
Again, the car, it should be reliable, safe transportation.
You don't need a BMW.
It doesn't have to be. It shouldn't be a status symbol. It doesn't. It needs to reliably get you from point A to point B, and reliable and safely. It doesn't have to be fun. It doesn't have to be luxurious. So it is important to keep it in your budget, but we got to be real. And then when it comes to a home, I mean, I have a 30-year mortgage. I have no intention of paying it off until I've lived in the house for 30 years. And I don't know why I would, because psychologically it doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. We don't keep adding to it. That is a mistake that people make. Mm-hmm. But I pay, I think it's about 3% on our mortgage, and it would be crazy for me to take money out of my investment portfolio to pay off that mortgage. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, great. Well, I think that's it for this topic. So thanks, y'all. As always, let us know anything you'd like to hear about. If you have any comments, anything we can discuss in detail, and we'll be seeing you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Iron Capital Advisors is an independent registered investment advisory firm headquartered in Atlanta with clients nationwide. Learn more about us at ironcapitaladvisors.com. The Iron Capital podcast is produced by Iron Capital Advisors. Our awesome original theme music was written and performed by Michael Smith and Leah Calvert. This content is for educational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions or advice. Clients and employees of Iron Capital may maintain positions in the securities discussed. Please like and subscribe to the Iron Capital podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back with